What if I told you that the very way you've been touching yourself over the years may be quietly holding you back from feeling fully alive, connected, and intimate even now? For many women in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, self-pleasure has always been thought of as safe, natural, and healthy. And it is. But what if I told you that when it's done in certain ways, it can gradually dull your sensitivity, reduce your arousal, and even leave you feeling distant from your partner? I'm Dr. Lisa Perriera, a board-certified physician with more than 30 years of experience in women's health. Over the decades, I've sat with thousands of women, mothers, wives, grandmothers, who quietly confessed that something had changed. They weren't feeling as much during intimacy, they had trouble reaching climax, or their confidence in the bedroom had slipped away. And often the reason wasn't age itself. It was how their bodies had been conditioned by habits they picked up long ago. That's why I need your full attention. Because in this video, we're going to talk about 5 common self-pleasure mistakes that can silently sabotage your intimacy after 60, and most importantly, what you can do to reverse them. Before we begin, if you find this conversation valuable, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a new video. And if you want to support other women in our community, drop a quick yes in the comments. Your feedback helps me create content that truly meets your needs. Now let's start with the very first mistake one I see again and again in my practice. It's so common that I would estimate nearly 9 out of 10 women fall into it at some point. And while it may feel like the quickest, most effective way to experience pleasure, it can over time quietly change the way your brain and body respond. Mistake 1. The high vibration trap. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine sitting across from a woman in her 60s who looks down, lowers her voice, and says, "Doctor, something's different. I can't feel like I used to. I try, but it's like my body just won't respond." I've heard that same story hundreds of times, and when we gently dig a little deeper, a common thread often emerges: years of relying on very intense, focused stimulation, most often from a powerful vibrator set at its highest speed. At first, this kind of stimulation feels efficient and even thrilling. But over time, the body and brain adapt. Research has shown that our nervous system is highly trainable. When your brain becomes conditioned to expect intense, direct clitoral stimulation, it begins to need that level of intensity to register arousal or achieve climax. This phenomenon, sometimes called sensory adaptation, is well documented in neuroscience. The problem is real-life intimacy, whether from a partner's hand, mouth, or touch, rarely matches the machine-like strength of a high-powered vibrator. The result: when you're with someone you care about, the connection is there, the desire is there, but your body doesn't respond. You may struggle to feel aroused, or you find it harder to climax, not because you've lost your sexuality, but because your brain has been wired to expect a type of stimulation that doesn't happen naturally in partnered intimacy. Beyond the physical, this pattern often chips away at confidence. Some women begin to avoid sex altogether, not because they don't want it, but because they're afraid of disappointment. Others carry silent shame, believing something inside them is broken. But the truth is, nothing is broken. What's happened is simply conditioning, and conditioning can be unlearned. If this feels familiar, here's what you can do. First, know that change is possible, even if you've relied on high-intensity stimulation for decades. Start small by turning down the settings on your vibrator or taking breaks from using it. Reintroduce your hands and give yourself permission to explore different areas of your body, your inner thighs, your breasts, even your lower back. Slow down, breathe, and notice the subtler sensations that emerge when you're not rushing. Think of it like retraining your palate. If you've eaten very salty or very sweet foods for years, at first fresh fruit or lightly seasoned meals may taste bland. But give your taste buds time, and soon you begin to appreciate their natural flavors again. In the same way, your body can relearn to respond to gentler, more realistic forms of pleasure. And here's something important to remember. This isn't just about restoring sexual response. It's about restoring confidence, connection, and trust in your own body. When you relearn to enjoy a softer, more natural rhythm, intimacy with a partner often becomes easier, more fulfilling, and less stressful. Now, I know what you might be thinking. If something so common can cause this much trouble, what about the other habits I've carried with me all these years? That's exactly why we need to talk about the second mistake. Because while intensity can rewire your body, repetition of the same mental patterns can rewire your brain. And that change is even more powerful than most women realize. We'll get to that next. In part 1, we talked about the high vibration trap, the habit of relying on powerful, direct clitoral stimulation that can over time condition your body to respond only to intense mechanical input. If that resonated with you, you're not alone. But intensity isn't the only hidden saboteur. The mind plays a critical role in arousal, and when it gets stuck in repetitive patterns, it can be just as limiting as over-reliance on a device. At first glance, it sounds harmless. After all, using imagination, reading romance novels, or even watching erotica is something many women have turned to for years. But here's what science tells us: the brain is remarkably adaptable. It learns patterns quickly, especially when those patterns are tied to pleasure. Neurologists call this neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire itself based on repeated experiences. When your arousal is repeatedly paired with a single kind of fantasy or a narrow type of erotic material, your brain begins to expect that specific script. Over time, real-life intimacy, your partner's touch, the warmth of skin-to-skin connection, the spontaneous laughter that sometimes happens in bed, feels muted in comparison. Your body and brain may respond less, not because you've lost the capacity, but because your arousal has been linked so strongly to a single trigger. The result is something called desensitization. What once excited you no longer does, unless the fantasy becomes more extreme or more specific. It's like listening to the same favorite song every day until eventually it loses its spark. And tragically, when you're with a real partner, your mind can drift away, searching for that script, instead of being fully present in the moment. But here's the encouraging part: this too can be reversed. Start by varying what you expose yourself to. If you tend to return to the same storyline, try giving yourself a break from it altogether. Explore your imagination in new ways, or better yet, focus inward on the physical sensations of your body, rather than outward on a mental story. Mindfulness practices, paying attention to breath, touch, and sound, can gradually recondition the brain to find arousal in the here and now. If you enjoy written or visual erotica, experiment with different genres, or consider sharing it with your partner to create a more connected experience. Variety is not about losing what's familiar. It's about reopening the door to flexibility and spontaneity. Just as changing your workout routine can reawaken muscles you forgot you had, changing your arousal cues can reignite responsiveness you thought was gone. Now, if intensity and repetition can both interfere with intimacy, there's another subtle habit that women develop much earlier in life, often during adolescence. It's so ingrained that most don't even realize it's still shaping their experiences decades later. Mistake 3. Treating masturbation like a race. Think back to your younger years. For many women, self-pleasure was something hidden, something you did quickly, quietly, and with a lingering sense of guilt. You may have locked a bedroom door or hurried in the bathroom, worried someone would find out. The goal wasn't exploration or deep connection with your body. The goal was speed and secrecy. The trouble is, once those habits are set, they often persist. Even into our 50s, 60s, or 70s, many women still approach self-pleasure like a sprint. Patients like Diane from Texas have told me I don't even think about it. I just finish in a few minutes like I always have. The body adapts to that rhythm. It learns to climax quickly without going through the natural build-up of arousal that allows for full-bodied sensation and satisfaction. The cost of this quick-fix approach is twofold. First, it reduces your own pleasure. You miss out on the gradual unfolding of arousal, the way sensation can build in waves across different parts of the body. Second, it limits intimacy with a partner. If your body is trained to respond only to speed, slower lovemaking may feel unsatisfying or frustrating. And perhaps most importantly, it keeps shame alive. Deep down, many women still carry the old messages from youth that sexuality was something to hide, or that seeking pleasure was somehow wrong. Even if you logically know better, that emotional undercurrent can persist, casting a shadow over both solo and partnered intimacy. So what's the alternative? Give yourself the gift of time. Carve out space for self-pleasure that isn't rushed or hidden. Light a candle, play soft music, or simply close your eyes and breathe deeply. Use your hands not only for direct stimulation, but for caressing your arms, your chest, your hips, reminding yourself that your whole body is capable of pleasure. Approach it with curiosity rather than urgency. Notice how your body responds when you slow down. Allow arousal to build in layers instead of rushing straight to climax. Think of it as learning a new language of touch, one that speaks not of panic or secrecy, but of self-respect and enjoyment. This shift doesn't just enhance your sexuality, it restores a sense of calm confidence and ownership over your body. And when you carry that new energy into intimacy with a partner, the difference can be profound. But as freeing as slowing down can be, there's another obstacle many women face, one that has less to do with pace or fantasy, and more to do with physical comfort. It's something surprisingly simple, yet shockingly overlooked. And if you've ever felt burning dryness or irritation after self-pleasure, this next mistake may be the reason why. That's where we'll pick up next. In the last section, we explored how the mind and pace of self-pleasure can quietly shape your sexual health. We talked about how repeating the same fantasy can condition the brain to crave only one script, and how rushing through self-pleasure like a race can limit both your pleasure and your connection. Now let's move into a more physical, but equally important mistake. This one is so simple, yet so commonly overlooked, that many women don't realize the harm it's causing until years later. Mistake 4. Not using lubrication, or using the wrong kind. I can't count how many times I've had a woman in her 60s or 70s sit across from me describing irritation, stinging, or even pain after self-pleasure. When I gently ask, "Do you use lubricant?" the response is often surprise. "No, I never needed that before," or "I just assumed dryness was normal at my age." Here's the reality: as we age, our bodies change. After menopause, estrogen levels decline. This hormonal shift causes the tissues of the vulva and vagina to become thinner, more fragile, and less naturally moist. What used to feel comfortable at 30 can feel abrasive at 65. Without lubrication, the delicate skin can develop tiny microtears, so small you may not even notice them at first. But those small injuries can lead to chronic irritation, inflammation, and over time, reduced sensitivity. Even worse, some women try to make do with whatever is around petroleum jelly-scented lotions, or even soaps. These products may seem harmless, but they disrupt the natural pH balance of the vagina clog pores and increase the risk of infections or allergic reactions. The very products meant to provide relief can cause more harm in the long run. So what's the solution? The right kind of lubrication used intentionally. A high-quality, body-safe lubricant designed specifically for intimacy can make all the difference. Water-based lubricants are gentle, easy to clean, and safe with most toys. Silicone-based lubricants last longer and can be especially helpful if dryness is significant. And if you prefer something natural, organic coconut oil is an option many women enjoy, though it's best avoided if you're using latex products, since oils can weaken them. When you begin using lubrication regularly, you're not just preventing discomfort, you're protecting your long-term sexual health. Think of it like moisturizing your skin. As we get older, we wouldn't skip lotion for our hands or face. The same principle applies here. A small adjustment in your routine can preserve sensitivity, prevent irritation, and restore comfort and pleasure. Neglecting this simple step is like driving a car without oil. You might get away with it for a while, but eventually something breaks down. By honoring your body's new needs, you make it possible to keep enjoying intimacy, not only without pain, but with renewed ease and confidence. But even when the physical side is cared for, there's one last mistake that quietly undermines everything else. It doesn't damage the skin or condition the brain directly, but it seeps into every intimate moment, casting a shadow over your confidence and your connection. Mistake 5: carrying shame into the bedroom. For many women, this is the heaviest burden of all. I've sat with women in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, who still lower their voices when they admit they masturbate as if it were a dirty secret. These are women who have raised families, led careers, cared for loved ones, yet still feel that their own sexuality must be hidden. Why? Because the messages they absorbed decades ago never fully went away. Many grew up believing that good women didn't touch themselves, or that sexuality existed only to please a husband. Even if they now know logically that those beliefs aren't true emotionally, the shame can linger. And that shame doesn't just sit quietly in the background, it spills into everything. It makes it harder to feel fully present during intimacy with a partner. It makes you question whether your desires are normal. It creates distance not because you don't want connection, but because deep down, you wonder if you deserve it. Some women even begin to believe they've aged out of sexuality altogether. But here's what I want you to hear clearly. There is nothing shameful about caring for your body. There is nothing wrong with seeking pleasure, connection, and touch at any age. In fact, research from institutions like the National Institutes of Health shows that sexual well-being remains an important part of health and quality of life well into older adulthood. Masturbation is not a sign of loneliness or dysfunction. It's a form of self-awareness, of stress relief, of staying connected to your body. When you let go of guilt, you don't just reclaim physical pleasure, you rebuild trust in yourself. You open space for deeper intimacy with a partner. You allow yourself to be fully human, embracing both your needs and your worth. So how do you release shame that's been with you for decades? It starts with permission. Give yourself permission to experience pleasure without apology. Shift your mindset. Instead of seeing self-pleasure as something secret or wrong, see it as an act of care, like stretching, meditating, or eating nourishing food. Talk about it with trusted friends or partners. The more we bring sexuality into the light, the less power shame has over us. This change may feel uncomfortable at first, but over time, as you approach your body without judgment, something shifts. You begin to see yourself not as someone too old or too broken, but as someone still vibrant, still deserving of intimacy, still capable of joy. And that is the essence of this journey. These 5 mistakes, the high vibration trap, repeating the same fantasies, rushing through pleasure, ignoring lubrication, and carrying shame, don't define you. They are simply patterns, and patterns once seen can be changed. As we move into the final section, I want to invite you to reflect. Which of these mistakes felt most familiar to you? which small adjustment feels possible for you right now. Because every shift, no matter how small, is a step toward reclaiming intimacy, vitality, and connection. In our last part, we'll bring everything together. We'll talk about how to unlearn these habits, rebuild sensitivity and confidence, and step into a healthier, more fulfilling, intimate life. One that reflects not your past conditioning, but your present worth. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you. Talking about these deeply personal habits isn't always easy. For many women, it stirs old memories, feelings of guilt, or even fears about what aging means for their sexuality. But you've chosen not to shy away. You've chosen to listen to learn, and to take back control of your body and your pleasure. That alone is powerful. Let's take a step back and reflect on where we've been. We uncovered 5 silent habits that so many women over 60 carry without even realizing the impact. The high vibration trap, where reliance on overly intense stimulation conditions the body to expect what real intimacy can't replicate. The habit of relying on the same fantasies or media which can rewire the brain away from real connection. The rushed approach learned in youth that robs self-pleasure of depth and discovery. The absence or misuse of lubrication which can physically harm delicate tissue and diminish comfort. And finally, the quiet weight of shame, the most invisible yet most destructive of them all. Each of these mistakes may seem small on its own, but together they can create distance from your partner, from pleasure, and even from yourself. And yet what I want you to carry forward is this: none of these patterns define you. They are simply habits shaped by culture, by time, by circumstance. And habits can be unlearned. So what does that look like? It begins with awareness, the very step you've taken by being here. From there, it's about making small, intentional changes, choosing a lower setting, or sometimes setting the toy aside altogether, allowing yourself to explore new fantasies, or better yet, embracing the richness of real touch, sound, and connection. Taking the time to slow down, giving yourself permission to savor instead of rush. Using the right lubrication, caring for your body the way it deserves. And most importantly, lifting the burden of shame and replacing it with self-respect and compassion. When you start to shift these habits, something beautiful happens. Sensitivity begins to return. Arousal becomes more natural. Confidence rebuilds. Intimacy feels less like performance and more like connection, whether that's with your partner or within yourself. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to see your sexuality not as something that fades with age, but as something that evolves, deepens, and continues to matter. I've witnessed this transformation in countless women patients who thought their best days were behind them, only to discover that pleasure, connection, and vitality were still very much within reach. And you can be one of them. Here's the life lesson I want to leave you with: your body is not finished, and neither is your capacity for joy. Sexuality isn't just about youth. It's about aliveness, about being connected to your own senses, your own desires, your own worth. It's about honoring yourself, not as who you were decades ago, but as the vibrant woman you are today. So I invite you to ask yourself, which one of these changed I? Your story matters, and it might just inspire another woman to begin her own journey of rediscovery. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon. That way, you'll never miss the kind of honest, compassionate health advice we create here just for women like you. Finally, I encourage you to share this video with a sister, a friend, or someone you know who may need this reminder. Too many women suffer in silence, believing their sexuality has expired. But the truth is, it hasn't. And sometimes all it takes is one conversation, one piece of knowledge, to bring back hope. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for honoring yourself enough to be here. And remember, you are not broken, you are not alone, and you are absolutely still worthy of intimacy, connection, and pleasure. This is Dr. Lisa Perriera, wishing you health, confidence, and joy today, tomorrow, and always.